What's going on, everyone? And welcome back. One of the biggest advantages of Project Ascension, Conquest of Azeroth, is that almost every class can be played successfully on your own. Whether you're leveling a fresh character, farming gold, completing difficult world quests, running older content, or simply exploring the world without waiting for a group, having the right solo build makes an enormous difference. The problem is that the strongest raid build isn't always the strongest solo build. Some builds are designed around maximizing damage with a full party supporting them. Others are built around survivability, self-healing, mobility, and consistency. Those are the qualities that really matter when you're playing alone. So today, we're going through the best solo build for every major DPS class in Conquest of Azeroth. For every class we'll cover the strongest solo build, why it works, its biggest strengths, its weaknesses, which players will enjoy it the most, and where it performs best, whether that's leveling, farming, elite enemies, or open-world exploration. By the end of this guide, you'll know exactly which build gives you the smoothest solo experience. Let's get started. How I rank these builds. Before we jump into the rankings, let's talk about what actually makes a good solo build. Solo content isn't about topping damage meters. It's about efficiency. When you're playing alone, I look at 5 major categories. The first is survivability. Can the class stay alive against difficult enemies without constantly eating food or waiting to recover? The second is damage output. A solo build still needs enough damage to defeat enemies quickly. The third category is downtime. The less time you spend recovering health, mana, or resources, the faster you'll progress. The fourth category is mobility. Moving quickly between objectives saves a surprising amount of time over the course of leveling or farming. And finally, I consider versatility. Can the build comfortably handle questing, elite enemies, farming, and general world content without constantly changing talents or gear? Those are the qualities that separate a great solo build from one that's only strong inside raids. With that in mind, let's begin with one of the strongest solo classes in the entire game. Necromancer, Undead Commander build. If you've asked experienced players which class dominates solo content, there's a very good chance they answered Necromancer. And honestly, it's easy to understand why. The Undead Commander build is almost perfectly designed for solo gameplay. Instead of taking every hit yourself, your undead minions become your frontline. They tank enemies, hold threat, create space, and allow you to safely attack from range. That immediately makes difficult content much easier. One of the biggest advantages of this build is consistency. Your summons continue dealing damage while you're moving, avoiding mechanics, or repositioning. That means you're almost always making progress during a fight. Another huge benefit is survivability. Many solo players struggle against elite enemies because they're forced to absorb every attack themselves. Necromancer avoids that problem almost entirely. Your minions take the punishment while you control the battlefield. This build also scales incredibly well. As your gear improves, your summons become stronger, making difficult encounters feel easier over time. If your goal is efficient leveling, farming rare enemies, completing difficult quests, or simply enjoying a relaxed solo experience, Necromancer is one of the easiest recommendations in Conquest of Azeroth. Best for solo questing, elite farming, world content, leveling, difficulty. Bloodmage, Crimson Survival Build. Next, let's talk about one of the most unique solo experiences available. Bloodmage. At first glance, using your own health to cast powerful abilities might sound like a terrible idea for solo content. But the Crimson Survival build completely changes how the class feels. Instead of being a fragile glass cannon, this setup focuses on balancing damage with self-sustain. You're constantly converting health into damage while using healing effects to recover before things become dangerous. That creates an incredibly satisfying rhythm. One moment you're sacrificing health for more damage. The next, you're recovering everything through your abilities. Mastering that balance is what makes Bloodmage so rewarding. The build performs exceptionally well against tougher enemies because it has enough sustain to survive extended fights without relying on external healing. It also handles farming extremely well since you spend very little time sitting down to recover between pulls. Of course, Bloodmage isn't as forgiving as Necromancer. Poor resource management or overconfidence can quickly get you killed. But for players who enjoy a more active, high-risk playstyle, it's one of the most engaging solo builds in the game. Best 4. Solo farming. Elite monsters. Experienced players. Difficulty. Those are two of the strongest solo builds currently available, but we're only getting started. Next, we'll cover Pyromancer, Venommancer, Chronommancer, Stormbringer, Ranger, and several other excellent solo builds, explaining exactly why each one succeeds when you're exploring Conquest of Azeroth on your own. Pyromancer, Phoenix build. Next up is one of the most explosive classes in Conquest of Azeroth. Pyromancer. Most players think Pyromancer is only good inside mythic dungeons because of its incredible AoE damage. But that's only part of the story. For solo content, I recommend the Phoenix build. Instead of putting everything into pure burst damage, this version balances offense with survivability, allowing you to clear quests quickly while still handling tougher enemies without feeling fragile. One of the biggest strengths of this build is speed. Normal enemies rarely survive your opening rotation. Quest objectives that might take other classes several minutes can often be completed much faster simply because enemies disappear before they even become a threat. Movement also feels fantastic. You're constantly moving from one objective to the next, pulling several enemies together before burning them all down at once. This aggressive playstyle makes leveling feel incredibly smooth. Against elite enemies, you'll need to play a little more carefully. Unlike Necromancer, you don't have permanent summons protecting you. Instead, success comes from good positioning, proper cooldown management, and eliminating dangerous enemies before they overwhelm you. Players who enjoy fast-paced gameplay will absolutely love this build. Every fight feels exciting, and you're constantly rewarded for playing aggressively. Best 4. Fast questing. World farming. AoE grinding. Leveling. Difficulty. Venommancer, Toxic Hunter build. Now let's move on to one of the most underrated solo classes in the game. Venommancer. Many players underestimate just how powerful damage over time builds become when you're playing alone. The Toxic Hunter build is all about efficiency. Instead of standing still and fighting every enemy until it dies, you're constantly moving. Apply your poisons. Move to the next target. Apply more poisons. Before you know it, multiple enemies are slowly collapsing behind you. That unique playstyle makes farming feel incredibly efficient. Another advantage is safety. Because your damage continues while you're moving, you're able to avoid many dangerous mechanics without sacrificing much overall damage. Against elite monsters, Venommancer performs surprisingly well. Longer fights actually work in your favor because your poison effects continue stacking over time. The only real weakness comes from extremely short fights. If enemies die immediately, you don't always get full value from your damage over time abilities. Still, for players who enjoy a more strategic approach instead of simply spamming abilities, Venommancer offers one of the smoothest solo experiences available. Best 4. Elite farming. Rare hunting. Long encounters. World content. Difficulty. Chronommancer, Time Walker build. Next we have Chronommancer. Chronommancer isn't necessarily the easiest solo class, but it might be one of the most rewarding. The Time Walker build focuses on mobility, cooldown management, and maintaining constant pressure while staying one step ahead of your enemies. What makes this build special is how much control it gives you. You're rarely standing still. Instead, you're constantly repositioning, avoiding incoming damage, and choosing the perfect moment to unleash your strongest abilities. Mistiming your cooldowns or making poor decisions during combat can significantly reduce both your survivability and damage. But if you're someone who enjoys mastering difficult classes, Chronomancer becomes incredibly satisfying over time. Best 4. Experienced players. World exploration. Solo challenges. Difficult questing. Difficulty. Stormbringer, Tempest Raider build. Now let's talk about one of the fastest classes in the game. Stormbringer. If your favorite part of MMORPGs is moving quickly through zones while chaining together abilities without stopping, the Tempest Raider build is worth considering. This build revolves around momentum. You're constantly moving from one fight directly into the next. Little downtime, little waiting, just continuous combat. Its mobility alone makes it one of the fastest classes for completing quest hubs. Instead of carefully pulling one enemy at a time, Stormbringer thrives when aggressively chaining together multiple fights while using movement abilities to stay ahead of incoming damage. Because you're so mobile, many dangerous mechanics become much easier to avoid. That naturally increases your survivability without requiring heavy defensive cooldowns. The challenge comes from execution. Stormbringer rewards players who stay active. If you hesitate too often or interrupt your rotation, your damage falls noticeably. For confident players who enjoy an energetic combat style, this build is incredibly fun and surprisingly efficient for solo progression. Best 4. Fast leveling. Open world farming. Exploration. Experienced players. Difficulty. We've now covered several of the strongest solo builds currently available, but we're not done yet. In the final part, we'll break down Ranger, reveal the best solo build for beginners, rank every solo build from S tier to B tier, share 5 tips that will dramatically improve your solo gameplay, and help you decide which class is the perfect fit for your playstyle. Ranger, Lone Hunter build. The last class we're covering today is Ranger. If you enjoy ranged combat, constant movement, and picking enemies apart before they ever reach you, the Lone Hunter build is one of the smoothest solo experiences in Conquest of Azeroth. Ranger has always been about positioning. Unlike melee classes that need to stay close to dangerous enemies, Ranger can keep a safe distance while dealing reliable damage from start to finish. That alone makes leveling and world content much more comfortable. The Lone Hunter build focuses on maximizing consistent damage while giving you enough mobility to kite dangerous enemies whenever necessary. Against normal quest mobs, enemies often die before they can even threaten you. Against elite enemies, the strategy changes. Instead of standing your ground, you'll constantly reposition, using your movement abilities and crowd control to create distance while continuing to deal damage. Once you master that rhythm, Ranger becomes incredibly efficient. Another reason this build is so enjoyable is how quickly you move through the world. Very little downtime, very little waiting. You're constantly moving from objective to objective while safely clearing everything in your path. The biggest weakness is survivability. Unlike Necromancer or Bloodmage, Ranger has fewer ways to recover from mistakes. If you become surrounded or fail to manage your positioning, things can go wrong quickly. But for players who enjoy precision and mobility, it's one of the most satisfying solo classes available. Best 4. Questing. Rare farming. Exploration. World content. Difficulty. Best solo build for beginners. So, if you're creating your very first character, which build should you actually choose? Without hesitation, I'd recommend the Necromancer Undead Commander build. It simply offers everything a new player needs. Excellent survivability, reliable damage, very little downtime, strong performance while leveling, and one of the easiest learning curves in the game. Your summons do an amazing job of protecting you, allowing you to focus on understanding your abilities instead of constantly worrying about dying. If Necromancer doesn't appeal to you, then I'd recommend Pyromancer. Its gameplay is straightforward, satisfying, and extremely fast. Watching enemies disappear under waves of fire makes questing feel incredibly rewarding. For players who enjoy ranged combat, Ranger is another fantastic beginner option because it teaches positioning and movement while remaining relatively easy to understand. Remember, your first class doesn't have to be your permanent main. The most important thing is finding a playstyle you genuinely enjoy. Everything else becomes easier from there. Best solo builds for different activities. Now let's break things down even further. Different solo activities reward different strengths. Best build for leveling. Necromancer. Fast. Safe. Consistent. You can pull multiple enemies without feeling overwhelmed, and your summons do an excellent job of keeping pressure off you. Best build for farming gold. Venommancer. The ability to continuously move while poison effects finish enemies makes farming routes incredibly efficient. Less downtime means more loot over time. Best build for elite monsters. Bloodmage. Its combination of sustained damage and self-healing makes difficult enemies much easier to defeat than many players expect. Best build for exploration. Stormbringer. Fast movement. Great mobility. Excellent map traversal. If your goal is simply exploring the world while completing objectives quickly, Stormbringer feels amazing. Best build for challenging solo content. Chronommancer. Not because it's the easiest, But because skilled players can avoid so much incoming damage through intelligent movement and cooldown management, its high skill ceiling gives experienced players incredible potential. Complete solo build tier list. After comparing every build based on survivability, damage, downtime, mobility, and overall efficiency, here's my complete solo ranking. S tier: Necromancer, Undead Commander; Bloodmage, Crimson Survival. These two builds dominate almost every type of solo content. Excellent sustain, excellent damage, excellent consistency, very few weaknesses. A tier: Pyromancer, Phoenix; Venommancer, Toxic Hunter; Chronommancer, Time Walker. These builds are incredibly powerful, but require either stronger execution or slightly better encounter knowledge to unlock their full potential. B tier: Stormbringer, Tempest Raider; Ranger, Lone Hunter. Still fantastic solo choices. They simply rely more heavily on player skill, positioning, or movement than the classes above them. And remember, this isn't a list of classes you should or shouldn't play. Every class in Conquest of Azeroth is capable of completing solo content. This ranking simply reflects how comfortable and efficient each build feels when you're playing alone. 5 tips to become better at solo play. Before we finish the guide, here are 5 tips that will improve your solo gameplay regardless of which class you choose. Tip number 1, don't overpull. Pulling half the zone might look impressive, but dying resets all your progress. Learn how many enemies your build can comfortably handle and stay within that limit until you're stronger. Tip number 2, upgrade your gear regularly. Many players hold on to outdated gear for far too long. A simple weapon upgrade can dramatically increase your kill speed and reduce incoming damage. Don't ignore easy upgrades while leveling. Tip number 3, use your defensive cooldowns. Too many players save defensive abilities for emergencies and then never use them. A defensive cooldown that prevents damage now is far more valuable than one you never cast. Use them proactively. Tip number 4, keep moving. Standing still is one of the easiest ways to take unnecessary damage. Even if your class doesn't require constant movement, repositioning intelligently will make fights smoother and safer. Mobility is a defensive tool. Use it. Tip number 5, play the build you enjoy. This is easily the most important advice. The strongest solo build on paper isn't always the strongest build for you. If you enjoy your class, you'll naturally practice more, improve faster, and ultimately perform better than someone forcing themselves to play the current meta. Solo play is one of the most enjoyable parts of Conquest of Azeroth. It gives you the freedom to explore at your own pace, farm when you want, complete challenging quests, and improve your class without relying on anyone else. While some builds definitely make that journey smoother, there's no single perfect answer for every player. Some people enjoy commanding an undead army with Necromancer. Others prefer the explosive power of Pyromancer. Some love the strategic pacing of Venommancer, while others thrive on the speed and mobility of Stormbringer. The best solo build isn't simply the one at the top of a tier list. It's the one that keeps you excited to log in and play. Take the time to experiment, learn your class, and discover the playstyle that fits you best. That's what makes Conquest of Azeroth such a rewarding MMORPG. And that's my complete guide to the best solo build for every class in Conquest of Azeroth. If this guide helped you decide which class or build to play, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Conquest of Azeroth content. I've got class guides, leveling guides, PvE and PvP tier lists, profession guides, gold farming tips, raid guides, mythic dungeon strategies, and plenty more coming soon. Now I want to hear from you. Which class do you think is the strongest for solo play? And what's your favorite solo build in Conquest of Azeroth? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy seeing your experiences and discussing different builds with the community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next guide.